So welcome to another episode of the Health Show here at KinesiologyZone. And as it's National Breastfeeding Week, I wanted to have a chat with Gemma McGowan, who is our systematic kinesiology practitioner. For how many years now, Gemma?
I qualified in 2012, so I've been qualified for 4 years. Yeah,
4 years, super. And she has two lovely children and has had very different experiences, I think, with both of them. And so I wanted to come and interview Gemma because she has some great support for women who wish to breastfeed. So Gemma, over to you. Tell us why you wanted to kind of share the resources and awareness about breastfeeding in Ireland.
Well, I think first of all, the main reason that I think breastfeeding is so important is because over 90% of the women in this country don't realize that they have superpowers. They are in fact superheroes, and their bodies are quite literally incredible. You know, not only can they grow a life inside them, but then they can provide the tailor-made nourishment for that life. And that child doesn't really need anything else for a year. You know, we look at kind of introducing food and stuff after 6 months, but they actually don't need any other nourishment than what their mother can provide them for a whole year. And I think that's completely incredible. And not only is it from a nourishment perspective, I mean, a lot of people talk about breastfeeding and immunity, but they don't talk about how that actually occurs and how amazing that is. So our natural instincts when we have a baby are, you know, we want to kiss them loads, we want to keep them as close to us as possible, we want to cuddle them. And when we do that, especially when we kiss their hands or we kiss their faces, what we actually do is we pick up pathogens off the baby's skin. So anything that might be floating around in the atmosphere that could cause our children to get sick, we pick those pathogens up in our mouths, that goes into our bodies, and we instantly generate antibodies that goes into our breast milk to help our children fight off whatever those antigens are. I just think that's completely amazing. Yeah. You know, that's a superpower.
And so it changes the milk? How fast, do you know?
A few hours. I'm not exactly sure of the exact time frame, but within the space of a couple of hours, you know, in the same day. Right. Let's say that the child would be exposed to the antigen, the pathogen, then we can provide the right milk to help them fight off that pathogen.
Wow. And so you haven't had to have a test from the doctor to see what maybe pathogens the child has. It's all instantly being generated.
Absolutely. So and because of that, it means that the milk is constantly changing to cater for the child's specific needs. Like another example is at night, women create breast milk that has a lot more melatonin in it to help their child sleep. You know, that's incredible. It changes constantly, you know. So, you know, people talk about they use the term breast is best. Breast is not best. Breast is biologically normal, and it's gone through millions of years of evolution to provide the exact nourishment, immunity, and comfort to our children that nothing else can provide for them. So yeah, I'm really passionate about breastfeeding, and we live in a country where, you know, over 90% of mums don't breastfeed, or they breastfeed for a very, very short period of time. We live in a country where the education around breastfeeding is utterly horrendous and dark ages type stuff, you know, and where formula is pushed on people at the slightest issue arising with their child, so or with their breastfeeding journey. So as kinesiologists, we are here, our job, our role is to ensure the best possible health and well-being of our clients. And our clients can also be newborn babies, you know. So why I want to help other kinesiologists is to deliver the message of the importance of breastfeeding in you know, a really non-judgmental, in a really encouraging, nurturing way, so that mums who might be a little bit trepidatious or vulnerable, as new mums are very, very vulnerable, you know, that we in our role as kinesiologists can help to support them, and therefore support their children, not only as newborns but throughout their lives. Because without that really, really, really important start, we are leaving our children open to diabetes, to obesity, to autoimmune conditions, you know, because the gut is permeable up until 6 months, you know, like when an adult has leaky gut syndrome, for example. A child is born with a completely permeable gut, and the reason for that is so that the antibodies and so the vitamins and minerals can pass through into the bloodstream really, really quickly from the breast milk. But if you put something in that's like an allergen, like cow's milk, for example, which is what all formula is made out of, we're triggering, because that can pass through into the bloodstream so easily through the permeable gut wall, we're triggering an immuno response in the body, so putting the body into a state of inflammation. And if you start that from word go, the likelihood then of you've already sensitized the gut, so the likelihood of the child then developing a range of other illnesses after that are massively increased. So so if we can stick with what's biologically normal, what our bodies have actually evolved to do and how to nourish our children, then we give them a much greater opportunity to not develop all of these other health implications as they get older.
Yeah, that's really interesting in terms of, you know, we think of our children being able to process food, and certainly, you know, the formula milks look the same, and have been, you know, got hundreds of years of history that we tell, you know, and research and scientific research and everything, as the ads say. So just going back to what you said about the lack of support, what are some of the issues that new mums have in hospitals? Like, obviously you've given birth to 2. What have you witnessed in your own experience?
Well, in my own experience, I suppose, well, my first son was a dream. My first child, my son, was a dream to feed. He kind of just latched on straight away, and that was absolutely fine. There was no feeding problems whatsoever with him. But what I did do was I went out and I attached myself to a community of other breastfeeding mums, because there was no one around me who was breastfeeding, you know. So from them, I learned of the innumerable stories of women who really haven't got any support from their healthcare practitioners in a hospital or after hospital, you know. With my daughter, it was dissimilar in that we did have feeding issues, because I created too much milk. So she found it very, very difficult to cope with the influx of milk that were coming from my breasts. So I had to figure out different feeding positions. Also, she had a tongue tie, which is when the tongue is much more attached to the bottom of the mouth. So it becomes very difficult for the child to latch on to the breast properly. And that's become very prevalent in this country. Now, we don't know for sure why that's happening, but it's actually being linked to the amount of folic acid that women are actually taking in pregnancy. Is possibly contributing to the massive amount of tongue and lip ties that we're seeing in this country, because undoubtedly babies are having problems latching on, and they're having to get their ties snipped, which they used to do in hospitals 50 years ago straight away, but they're not testing for them anymore. Okay. So you have to go to a lactation consultant to get it seen to, first of all, to see if there's actually one there, and then on to a doctor who will actually snip it, you know, and that can all take time. And in that time, there's you're putting the breastfeeding relationship into massive jeopardy in that space of time. That could all take weeks.
Wow.
Mother can give up within that time, or they could start introducing formula because the baby's maybe not gaining weight quickly enough, and the public health nurse is putting pressure on them, or the doctor's putting pressure on them for this baby to gain weight as quickly as possible, and it's not about the weight gain. They put everyone on a chart and they put them on time restrictions, and if you don't fit into that specific category that they want you in, then it's here, give your baby formula, never thinking about the health implications of what that actually means long term. So the government introduced the under 6 medical card, instead of thinking, well, why don't we plow loads and loads of money into supporting mothers who are breastfeeding, and then we wouldn't need an awful lot of the under 6 medical cards, So, but yeah, it's interesting. I had to go down the route with Bridgie of going through the tongue tie release, going to the lactation consultant, and I say that all took time. And in the meantime, she was crying so much and she was so full of wind, and it was really, really difficult for her because she couldn't latch on to me properly, so we had to go through that period, that very difficult period, and mothers have it much more difficult than that, but for me that was, it was a trying period. We got there in the end, and now we have the most amazing breastfeeding relationship, but it all took time. And for a lot of very vulnerable mothers who are not as stubborn or as pig-headed as me, who's determined that no matter what I was going to breastfeed my daughter, they would just give up.
Pressure, wouldn't there be, from crying baby, hungry baby, it's like, oh my goodness,
Exactly. And, because a baby generally, if they're feeding well and the breastfeeding relationship is going well, they will settle really well at the breast. They will fall asleep at the breast. And if a baby's not doing that and they're getting really upset at the breast, then a mother's going to question her body. She's going to question her capabilities as a mother. And you've got all of this social pressure going on outside of that. Would you not just give the baby a bottle?
Yeah.
And, there are a number of articles that have been written, about giving babies bottles, etc., and why one bottle is enough to, cause a split in the breastfeeding relationship, because, even the flow from a bottle is completely different than the flow from a breast. So a baby will, if a baby doesn't have to work as hard to get milk from a bottle than it does to get milk from a breast, it's going to get a preference for the bottle. So it's going to give up on the breast.
Yeah.
So instantly, as soon as you introduce a bottle, you are putting something in place that can damage the breastfeeding relationship, So there are huge social pressures out there for women. And as I say, the support that they should be getting from their public health nurses and their doctors, they are more concerned with how their child is putting on weight than they are with maintaining the breastfeeding relationship. And that's the reality.
And is there a difference on weight gain?
Massive difference. I mean, children who are breastfed are going to be different to children who are fed cow's milk. It's either you're feeding a child the milk of their own species or the milk of another species. Generally, formula-fed babies will gain weight an awful lot more quickly because there's a lot more fat in cow's milk than there is in human milk. They will generally sleep for longer periods of time because it's a lot more difficult for them to digest and break down everything that's actually in the formula milk. So, and again, we have this crazy thing about sleep, and babies should be sleeping for really long periods of time. It's like, no, they shouldn't. They've got a basic survival instinct inbuilt there from word go. They're going to wake up so that they don't die. They're going to wake up so that you can feed them and comfort them, and, so they will, but formula-fed babies will sleep for longer. That seems to be across the board, but the main reason being is because it's so much more difficult for them to digest. So all of their energy is going into digesting this formula milk.
So we can hear them in the background.
Oh boy, he's banging on the door going, "Mama, Mama." Yeah.
Okay, well let's wrap this up then, so we can get back to your gorgeous children. And so you have a masterclass coming up on the 19th of October.
do have a masterclass coming up on basically how, from a kinesiological perspective, how we can best support and encourage in a very nurturing, non-judgmental way breastfeeding mums, and how we can best work with breastfed babies, because again, it will be quite different to working with a formula fed baby. So we will be looking at the wonders of breast milk. We will be looking at kind of the politics of breastfeeding a bit as well, and I will be giving people tools in terms of how they can best support mothers, and also looking at the most common reasons why a mother would be coming to us as kinesiologists, whether it's colic or reflux, and how we can best deal with all of those different things.
Yeah. And do you think it'd be useful for other women who, maybe from the client perspective, they're going to get some information too that's maybe more empowering than the information that they've got already?
Well, sure. And especially, maybe prospective mothers in particular.
Yeah.
This is just information that they won't necessarily get from their public health nurse breastfeeding class, for example, but also I will provide links for things like La Leche League, for Quidju, which are the breastfeeding support networks where you can access breastfeeding counsellors. I'll give a list for lactation consultants, which are really, really important if you're thinking about breastfeeding, that at least where your local lactation consultant is, in case you do have any issues, that you can pick up the phone and call someone if you're having any problems.
Right, yeah, because there's loads of support out there, but it's just not maybe so visible. Yeah,
exactly. It's just knowing how to access it. Yeah.
Super. Well, listen, thank you, Gemma. It was lovely to talk to you. Thank you for coming on this health show. And yeah, National Breastfeeding Week. I know there's been a few things on the radio. So it's all
latch on.
Latch on. Super, Gemma. Thank you so much for joining us today. And get back to your kiddies and have a lovely weekend.
Thanks, Siobhan.
Right.
Talk soon. Take care.
Bye. Bye.